This is the final review, playthrough number 3. Okay, let's see. Okay, what do we need to look at? Let's look at the right way. There, this one. Let's go look at the right way to do an iron outpost. Then we'll go look at the main hub. Okay. So we have the equator. It just always gets lined by solar panels or something like solar panels. So this is just a super clean way to do this. So this this planet, the objective of this particular outpost was to just do iron, basic iron smelting, and supply the iron for that smelting on the same planet. It has over 230 million iron, so that was very possible. So basically, just this takes 4 lines of ore, full speed, and produces 4 full speed lines of output. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 full speed Mark III belts of iron. And then we are doing 4 full speed belts of magnets. Most of the magnet production is elsewhere. I just needed to add a little bit. Okay. And otherwise, it's important to make sure that you are only putting ore into either interplanetary or planetary. I went ahead and used, I think, interplanetary just because it holds 10,000. And basically, I set it up so that all the stuff you might want to mine on a planet, I just put in here. So that when I press Q and put one of these down, it's already set up exactly the same way. If I need to change 1 or 2 things, it's fine. But that saves a lot of time. Okay, and this is the outpost. And then on these outpost planets, I like just bringing in fuel and just wrapping it out like this. It seems to be really super easy to do this way. You don't end up with too much stuff. So this is where you bring in all the extra junk you need. Like, well, I was short on fusion power plants, needed some more belts, needed some more solar panels. And so I just will periodically, once I grab them, I switch them to remote storage, and I can switch this out with something else that I need. So as I'm building the outpost, getting short on things, I just come up here and request some stuff. That way I don't have to fly back and forth anywhere. I just come to the planet once and get everything done. Okay, that's a good outpost. Really, really good outpost. Another thing, if you're going late game, every single gas giant in the entire star cluster needs to be fully populated with 40 gas collectors. And sometimes you get fire ice / hydrogen collection happening. But this is just one of those things that is super easy to do, slightly tedious. But basically you go from playing a game where hydrogen and fire ice they are not infinite, to one where it is infinite. And the game is shaped very, very differently. And if fire ice is infinite, then graphene is infinite. And so suddenly, things that are occasional bottlenecks just aren't bottlenecks anymore. Makes a huge difference. And it's just basically passive infinite hydrogen, passive infinite fire ice. Okay, so we're grabbing unipolar magnets from the black hole and from the neutron star, which is, I don't know how to... There, neutron star. Actually, there's not much going on there. I must have mined almost everything. There's still some coming from the black hole. which was over there. Rafflecopter is the main system, and you can see there's a lot of traffic between this major iron outpost. That's almost entirely iron. A little bit of magnets. The original homeworld was Sol. We still have some traffic going back and forth there, just for miscellaneous things like buildings, excess rockets, stuff like that. Alright, well, and it's also good anytime you do spot a gas giant or something you need to come back to, it's good to put to-do in the title. And keeping names extremely simple, like iron, putting the most high priority task of a star system in the name of the star. Like, the first thing is most important, then second, and then third. So this produces a lot of iron, then a decent amount of magnets, and then it has 40 gas collectors on a gas giant. Also, it's a good idea to put deuterium production onto the moon around a gas giant. And you can do like particle colliders. You do them in chunks of 30. Where every chunk of 30, it's actually 2 lines of 15 particle colliders. Each one processes a full Mark III belt of hydrogen and produces half a Mark III belt of deuterium. And it's really efficient to just do that local to the gas giant. And that way, instead of having to truck that hydrogen too far to produce deuterium, you can just kind of do it local. It's not a huge deal to do it elsewhere. But that's one thing I do like to do, because I rarely want hydrogen, and I always want deuterium. Deuterium, basically, Dyson spheres are essentially constructed from deuterium. A whole, like, either 60 or 80 deuterium go into every single rocket, and there are millions of rockets needed for really large Dyson spheres. It's pretty extreme. We're going to go check the hub. If you do kind of have a centralized home base, which is pretty normal for this game, since especially if you start building a really large Dyson sphere, there's a couple techniques that are worth doing. Those are all rockets going out. Autosave. We're going to admire some rockets going up here. All of those are rockets. Go check that out. You can see we have a lot of extra rocket launchers now. 2 rings of rocket launchers. Let's check the Dyson Sphere. So these are all the rockets coming in, and then we should have 4 streams. Yeah, we have 4 streams of solar sails. And I was in the process of dismantling these large polygons and converting them to smaller polygons. Looks like I forgot to do that one. There we go. In the future, if you're going for max power, tiny polygons is key. Okay. And time of construction actually goes down. Okay, so 2 rings of rocket launchers, 3 rings of solar sail shooters, and this is the main hub on my main star system where I'm building the big Dyson Sphere. And these simply grab things. I've basically enslaved my original homeworld. I'm just exporting all the buildings here. So anytime I need to do anything, I just get it in this ring like this. And as far as how far out do you want to do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Between 8 and 9 blocks away from the center, it looks like. Basically, you want to be able to put a few of these, quite a few of these in a circle if possible. And I didn't even quite use up my full circle, but I am missing 1 or 2 buildings, I think, or 1 or 2 things I could have in here that I don't. Okay, so that's that pull. I'm gonna go check out the research station. And it simply imports white science from factory planets and then spits it out like this, and it gets used up like that. Pretty straightforward there. Now let's go see how a proper factory planet looks. If I can find it. Oh, how big is this sphere now? 294 gigawatts, not bad. There's the rockets going out. Watch that a sec. Next batch of rockets. There they go. Okay. Factory is where... Actually, I want to go smelter. Where are you, smelter? Should have just done this. Oh, it's on the other side of the star. That's why. All right, probably good to just kind of stay. Well, so you can see on this view. Whoops, not this view. This view. There we go. You can see the poles have a bunch of transport towers where they basically pull in things that are going to be needed for the factory. The thing is, you don't want to be importing stuff from 10 light years away directly into the factory. Or sometimes you can. But if you have multiple high-speed belts of that thing coming out, you don't. Because then you can be vessel constrained. So what we do is we use the vessels here, and then we can use interplanet or these planetary bots to move them back and forth. You basically gain access to a bunch of extra vessels that way. And then we have the same thing over here, just pulling in, well, here we go. Hydrogen, deuterium, unipolar magnets. Like unipolar magnets are coming in from way far away. So it's pretty important to do this concept. So we can see 2 vessels are being used right now just for the unipolar magnets. And it's good to be using these vessels instead of the vessels down here on these actual factories. Otherwise, let's see. So we have a ring here, then we have a ring at the tropics, and a ring at the tropics here. And the factories hug this one, and they hug this one. Then we have a fraction. This was a fractionator experiment that spans the entire planet. That kind of divides that further. I'm not going to do fractionators in that way in the future, but because it's just, even though the community will tell you otherwise, it is better to use colliders. And if you care about the number of clicks and the time it takes and the space it takes, all things considered, colliders are significantly better if you're playing at scale. If you're playing a tiny situation, then it doesn't really matter what you do. But yeah, this is the main design. Really long factories, you want to have inputs on one side, outputs on the other. But if it's not too big, it's sometimes you can have inputs and outputs on the same side. Although it does matter a little bit. Like here's a really simple one, but I am exporting on the other side. Sometimes I will export into the next factory over. This is a good example of just a simple smelting situation where we have inputs and outputs going into and out of the same tower. You do have to be a little bit careful on that because these vessels might be used for both purposes. So you might end up being vessel constrained depending upon what's going on. But the way this planet is set up, that iron is mostly being used locally. Mostly. And so the way this shakes out, so inside this star system, notice the things are just going right back and forth. They're actually warping between planets inside the same star system. That's important. You achieve that by setting distance to enable warp to minimum. And once you get to green science, you basically have infinite warpers, so it doesn't even matter that you're doing that. It saves a ton of time, so your throughput between towers, between planets is extreme once you turn that on. And then, so we have highways within the system here. There's a lot of ore on that planet. There's other factory stuff here. And then this is the main hub. And okay, FEDEX is the neat thing we need to go look at. So this is one of the keys. If you're going with a centralized kind of main base where you're producing a massive like a massive Dyson Sphere, it's really important to have a planet like this. Okay, so I do have some factory stuff here, but that's not the important point. The important point is these things. That's right, the reason why this is called FEDEX. Okay, so you have pairs of towers connected by belts. On one, notice the transport range of vessels is very high, and you import a single thing. And that single thing exports to another tower. The transport range of vessels is minimum. So basically all this graphene goes to here, and this graphene can only stay within the star system. So what that means, and we saw how fast the interplanetary vessels were traveling since we turned on warp for them. So now if we look at FEDEX, and if we look at the things coming in and out, so notice just the rapid travel back and forth to the main factory planet we were just at. This has happened so quickly, it's as if all of those short-range towers are actually on that planet. And there's just not room for them there. So you can use an entire planet just as like a warehouse of stuff. So instead of your main factory planet having to pull graphene and stuff from here or wherever, it gets buffered up ahead of time on your FEDEX planet, and then when it's needed in the factory, it just yanks it over in just a few seconds. So that is a hugely important technique that I think will be overlooked by most people. What else should we look at? I'm going to go show one of the deuterium factories, because I think it's important to get that right, because if you're building at scale, you basically build Dyson spheres with deuterium. So how do we do that right? Let's see if I can find one. Built a large one somewhere. See, I need to name these better. Actually, was there one here? No. Oh yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so you simply have 2 Mark III belts of hydrogen going in, and you have 2 half belts of deuterium going out. So it's just 15 particle colliders on a row, a line of latitude, and so here we have 30, 30, 30, so we have 90. So this is producing 1.5 full belts of deuterium. No, that's not true. This is producing 3 full belts of deuterium, and it consumes 6 full belts of hydrogen. And you can see that actually takes up very little room when you factor in just how much deuterium you're producing. If you had to do this with fractionators, it would take 10 to 20 times the amount of clicks. It would take a corresponding additional amount of time, and it would take 3.5 to 4 times the amount of real estate. They say 3.33 times, I believe. but you have to have extra infrastructure when you use fractionators at the scale, because you have to account for edge conditions. And this one is just the most trivial thing possible, essentially. One tower, 30 colliders, gets you a full belt of deuterium. It's just ultra simple. So remember, Dyson spheres are built with deuterium, and this is the best way to do deuterium. And so when I talked earlier about converting to deuterium at the moon of a gas giant, I would put 2 or 3 towers worth of this around that moon, and then just whatever's left over, just let it all export. These do take 12 megawatts each when they're working, so that ends up consuming quite a lot of power. But since we are producing a lot of deuterium, that means we have an infinite supply of deuterium fuel rods. So it's ultra trivial to set up 1, 2, or 3 gigawatts of power at your deuterium outposts. In fact, it's not a stretch, especially when blueprints are a thing, to actually produce deuterium fuel rods on site, because there is some value just for your entire star cluster of having deuterium fuel rod production decentralized, so that if your main planet goes down for some unforeseen reason, all of your outposts don't get shut down. So as long as there's a trickle of deuterium fuel rods elsewhere in the star cluster, that can keep the power from going out at least. And all you have to do is you have to import titanium alloy. It's only 1 per fuel rod, and the other thing are supermagnetic rings, I believe, and it's only 1 of those. So you can see it consumes almost nothing except deuterium to produce those. So if you don't mind importing a couple thousand each of alloy and the supermagnetic rings to your deuterium outpost, then it's pretty trivial to just set up like 10 assemblers, cranking out deuterium fuel rods, sticking them with remote supply on an interstellar logistics tower. It's a smart thing to do, and it's really easy to do, because you use that same tower to import the alloy and the rings. Okay, I guess it's everything worth showing. That's all. End of playthrough 3. Number 4 begins.